make those decisions in a positive way.
Chair now recognizes former chairman of the committee, Mr. Barton of Texas, for 4 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here. People need to know that you're here voluntarily. You're not here because you've been subpoenaed, so we appreciate that. Sitting behind you have a gentleman who used to be counsel for the committee, Mr. Jim Barnett, and if he's affiliated with Facebook, you've got a good one. If he's not, he's just got a great seat. I don't know what it is. I'm going to read you a question that I was asked. I got this through Facebook, and I've got dozens like this. So my first question, please ask Mr. Zuckerberg, why is Facebook censoring conservative bloggers such as Diamond and Silk? Facebook called them unsafe to the community. That is ludicrous. They hold conservative views. That isn't unsafe. What's your response to?
Congressman, in that specific case, our team made an enforcement error, and we have already gotten in touch with them to reverse it.
Okay. Well, Facebook does tremendous good. When I met you in my office 8 years ago, you don't remember that, but I've got a picture of you when you had curly hair, and Facebook had 500 million users. Now it's got over 2 billion. That's a success story in anybody's book. It's such an integral part of certainly young Americans' lives that you need to work with Congress and the community to ensure that it is a neutral, safe, and to the largest extent possible, private platform. Do you agree with that?
Congressman, I do agree that we should work to give people the fullest free expression that is possible. That's what, when I talk about giving people a voice, that's what I care about.
Okay. Let's talk about children. Children can get a Facebook account of their own, I believe, starting at age 13. Is that not correct?
Congressman, that's correct.
Okay. Is there any reason that we couldn't have just a no data sharing policy, period, until you're 18? Just if you're a child with your own Facebook account, until you reach the age of 18, you know, it's you know, you can't share anything. It's their data, their picture. It doesn't go anywhere. Nobody gets to scrape it. Nobody gets to access it. It's absolutely, totally private. Well, for children, what's wrong with that?
Congressman, we have a number of measures in place to protect minors specifically. We make it so that adults can't contact minors who they aren't already friends with. We make it so that certain content that may be inappropriate for minors we don't show. The reality that we see is that teens often do want to share their opinions publicly. And that's a service that...
well, we would let them opt in to do that.
Yes, we do.
But don't, you know, unless they specifically allow it, then don't allow it. That's my point.
Congressman, every time that someone chooses to share something on Facebook,
now we're good.
You go to the app, right there, it says, who do you want to share with? When you sign up for a Facebook account, it starts off sharing with just your friends. If you want to share it publicly, you have to specifically go and change that setting to be sharing publicly.
But I'm about out of time. I actually use Facebook, and you know, I know if you take the time, you can go to your privacy and click on that, and you can go to your settings and click on that. You can pretty well set up your Facebook account to be almost totally private, but you have to really work at it. And my time's expired. Hopefully we can do some questions in writing as a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, for 4 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, welcome. In the 1960s, our government, acting through the FBI and local police, maliciously tricked individuals and organizations into participating in something called COINTELPRO, which was a counterintelligence program where they tracked and shared information about civil rights activists, their political, social, civic, even religious affiliations, and I personally was a victim of COINTELPRO. Your organization, your methodology, in my opinion, is similar. You're truncating the basic rights of the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by the wholesale invasion and manipulation of their right to privacy. Mr. Zuckerberg, what is the difference between Facebook's methodology and the methodology of the American political pariah, J. Edgar Hoover?
Congressman, this is an important question because I think people often ask what the difference is between surveillance and what we do, and I think that the difference is extremely clear, which is that on Facebook, you have control over your information. The content that you share, you put there. You can take it down at any time. The information that we collect, you can choose to have us not collect. You could delete any of it, and of course you can leave Facebook if you want. I know of no surveillance organization that gives people the option to delete the data that they have or even know what they're collecting.
Mr. Zuckerberg, you should be commended that Facebook has grown so big so fast. It is no longer the company that you started in your dorm room. Instead, it's one of great American success stories. That much influence comes with enormous social responsibility of which you have failed to act and to protect and to consider. Shouldn't Facebook, by default, protect users' information? Why is the onus on the user to opt in to privacy and security settings?
Congressman, as I said, every time that a person chooses to share something on Facebook, they're proactively going to the service and choosing that they want to share a photo, write a message to someone. And every time there's a control right there, not buried in settings somewhere, but right there when they're posting about who they want to share it with.
Mr. Zuckerberg, I only have a few more seconds. In November 2017, ProPublica reported that Facebook was still allowed housing advertisers to systematically exclude advertisements to specific racial groups and explicitly prohibited practice. This is just one example where Facebook has allowed race to improperly play a role. What has Facebook done, and what are you doing to ensure that your targeted advertisements and other components of your platform are in compliance with federal laws such as the Civil Rights Act of 1968?
Congressman, since we learned about that, we removed the option for advertisers to exclude ethnic groups from targeting.
When did you do that?
The gentleman's time has expired. We need to go now to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton, for 4 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the committee. A number of times in the last day or two, you've indicated that, in fact, you're now open to some type of regulation, and we know, of course, that you're the dominant social media platform without any true competitor, in all frankness, and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of folks that would be required to help navigate any type of regulatory environment. Some would argue that a more regulatory environment might ultimately stifle new platforms and innovators. Some might describe as desperately needed competition, i.e. regulatory complexity helps protect those folks like you. It could create a harmful barrier to entry for some startups, particularly ones that might want to compete with you. So should we policymakers up here be more focused on the needs of startups over large incumbents? And what kind of policy regulatory environment would you want instead of managing maybe a Fortune 500 company if you were launching a startup to take on the big guy?
Congressman, thank you. And let me say a couple of things on this. First, to your point about competition, the average American uses about 8 different apps to communicate and stay connected to people. So there's a lot of competition that we feel every day, and that's an important force that we definitely feel in running the company. Second, on your point about regulation, the internet is growing in importance around the world in people's lives, and I think that it is inevitable that there will need to be some regulation. So my position is not that there should be no regulation, but I also think that you have to be careful about what regulation you put in place for a lot of the reasons that you're saying. I think a lot of times regulation, by definition, puts in place rules that a company that is larger, that has resources like ours, can easily comply with, but that might be more difficult for a smaller startup to comply with. So I think that these are all things that need to be thought through very carefully when thinking through what rules we want to put in place.
To follow up a question that Mr. Barton asked about Silk and Diamond, I don't know whether you know about this particular case. I have a former state rep who's running for state senate. He's the former Michigan lottery commissioner, so he's a guy of fairly good political prominence. He announced for state senate just in the last week, and he had what I thought was a rather positive announcement, and I'll read to you precisely what it was. I'm proud to announce my candidacy for state senate. Lansing needs conservative West Michigan values, and as our next state senator, I will work to strengthen our economy, limit government, lower our auto insurance rates, balance the budget, stop sanctuary cities, pay down government debt, be a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment lawmaker, end. It was rejected, and the response from you all was it wasn't approved because it doesn't follow our advertising policies. We don't allow ads that contain shocking, disrespectful, or sensational content, including ads that depict violence or threats of violence. I'm not sure where the threat was based on what he tried to post.
Congressman, I'm not sure either. I'm not familiar with that specific case. It's quite possible that we made a mistake, and we'll follow up afterwards on that.
Okay.
Overall, we have, by the end of this year, we'll have about 20,000 people at the company who work on security and content review related issues. But there's a lot of content flowing through the systems and a lot of reports. And unfortunately, we don't always get these things right when people report it to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair recognizes